Hello and welcome to the Recovered on Purpose show, Monday Motivation Live. Today we're going to be diving into the big book and seeing what the language is that they were really using. And guys, if you haven't yet, make sure if you have a recovery story that you want to share with the world, that you're booking your free call with me and with the link that's in the pinned comment. Enjoy the show and keep living Recovered on Purpose.
The black represents the darkness from which we came. The white represents the light in which we now live. And the red represents the passion it takes to live recovered on purpose.
Hello. Welcome, everybody. Love seeing you here. I am super excited about this episode. I've never actually come out and publicly read from the big book and talked about what its effects were on me and my life. And then there's also language in there that a lot of us kind of just pass by. A lot of us don't understand what it's actually saying can happen for people like us. And when I actually heard the language read by someone that really understood this thing, that really lived this thing in his life, that's actually what caused me to find recovery. And I'm going to prelude this with saying that this is not connected with any fellowship. This book has been read and is used in hundreds of different 12-step fellowships. The literature is really great that helps people like us. And I'll be changing, when it says alcoholics, I'll be saying alcoholics and addicts because it does work for all of us. So let me know where you're coming in from. Guys, if you weren't here at the beginning of the show, the pinned comment is talking about a free call with me. And what I'm doing is people in recovery that want to share their stories, that want to get their stories out, learn how to tell it passionately and with a message and know how to deliver it exactly how they want to deliver it. I'm doing strategy calls. So basically, you'll tell me your story. We'll talk about your situation, what you want to do with your story, and then I'll give you feedback on exactly how we can get out. So Australia coming in. What's up, Aaron? Good to see you, brother. Where's everyone coming in from? And what is your clean and sober date? I want to see where everybody's at. And if you're in a fellowship that uses this book, or if you're in a fellowship that uses the basic text, we can use all of them. In our recovery, the thing is we have to be learning as much as possible about how to get in a state of being recovered. We don't have to constantly be in this place where we're fighting alcohol, we're fighting drugs every day of our life. I've been sober. It's almost coming in on 5 years. I've got a month and 5 days until I've got 5 years. And in this time, after day like 60, I started considering myself recovered because I was in this place where I wasn't fighting drugs and alcohol anymore. It was really weird. I had been fighting drugs and alcohol for my entire life. Well, I started using around 12 years old, not around 12 years old. At 12 years old, I was introduced to cocaine. And since that day, from then on until I did the step work, I had to have drugs. Even when I was trying to stop, there was always this thing in the back of my mind, like, how long is it going to be till I use again? What am I going to use again? Am I going to drink? Am I going to get drugs? How am I going to get these drugs? What drugs am I going to use? And then through this work, through the 12 steps, and it wasn't even connected with the fellowship, I found recovery from that state. One day, my mind went here. How long am I going to be? How long till I'm going to use? What am I going to use? And then the next day, it was as if my mind just went a different direction. I was no longer craving. I was no longer obsessing, and it was all gone. Erica, good to see you. Good to see you. Yes, good to see you. It's every Monday at 8 a.m., every Wednesday at 8 a.m. Aaron's got January 6th, 2020. Good work, brother. Good work. Good morning, Andrew. Man, you're going all over the world right now. Going all over the world. Super stoked. Good morning, Carrie. Good to see you. Good to see you. So I'm going to start out with the foreword of the 4th edition, because a lot of people say that this text is too old, it's outdated and things like that. But this is a foreword that was written in the 2000s, telling what's happened with this specific book, what's happened with people that have read this book and have worked this book, and it's worked up to this point. So why would we try to change the wheel when the wheel is already working, right? So this 4th edition of Alcoholics Anonymous came off press in November 2001 at the start of a new millennium. Since the 3rd edition was published in 1976, worldwide membership of AA has just about doubled to an estimated 2 million or more, with nearly 100,800 groups meeting in approximately 150 countries around the world. And by now, guys, by this time, I don't know where you're at, but the great thing about fellowships in recovery is that there are fellowships, whether it be AA or CA or NA or HA or any of these things, they're all over the world. And when someone hits me up seeking recovery, even though, I'm not connected with a specific fellowship, I talk to them about looking for fellowships. I talk to them about, here's a way that you can find groups in your area that are working on recovery together. And that's what's beautiful about us that all recover. We can do this from anywhere that we're at, and we can connect with people that have that same goal, that have that same mission, which is to stay recovered and help other addicts and alcoholics find recovery. Literature has played a major role in AA's growth, and a striking phenomenon of the past quarter century has been the explosion of translations of our basic literature into many languages and dialects. In country after country where the AA seed was planted, it has taken root, slowly at first, then growing by leaps and bounds when literature has become available. So listen to that. When literature has become available, that's when it started growing by leaps and bounds. It's not saying that the fellowships are what made the literature come about. The literature and the work and the program is what made it so that fellowships could exist, because we had found this common solution that was working for us. So when the literature became available to people and they started reading it, they started going through the work, they started finding recovery, being recovered, then they were able to pass that on to other people that were suffering. And before we found 12-step work, before we found this kind of program, there wasn't really anything for people like us. They were trying at asylums. They were trying treatment centers. They were trying to imprison us. Literally, guys, there was times in history where people like us were locked in an insane asylum in a room alone. That was the only hope of us not using drugs and alcohol. So we're super blessed to be in the state of the world that we are right now with the disease that we have. As the message of recovery has reached larger numbers of people, it has also touched the lives of a vastly greater variety of suffering alcoholics and addicts. When the phrase, "we are people who normally would not mix," page 17 of this book, was written in 1939, it referred to a fellowship composed largely of men and a few women with quite similar social, ethnic, and economic backgrounds. Like so much of AA's basic text, those words have proved to be far more visionary than the founding members could ever have imagined. The stories added to this edition represent a membership whose characteristics of age, gender, race, and culture have widened and have deepened to encompass virtually everyone the first 100 members could have hoped to reach. While our literature has preserved the integrity of the AA message, sweeping changes in society as a whole are reflected in new customs and practices within the fellowship. Taking advantage of technological advances, for example, AA members with computers can participate in meetings online, sharing with fellow alcoholics across the country or around the world. In any meeting, anywhere, AAs share experience, strength, and hope with each other in order to stay sober and help other alcoholics and addicts. Modem to modem or face to face, AAs speak the language of the heart in all its power and simplicity. Amen. And that's what's so amazing about finding recovery. When we find this thing, we're supposed to pass it on. And this was the path that I took. I was going to meetings every single day. I was going to church. I was going to Bible study. I was going to, MMA gyms, to my probation officer, to outpatient treatment, all of that stuff. And none of it was working for me. I couldn't find that recovery by osmosis, by going into a fellowship, listening to people, sharing from my heart. I couldn't get it. I couldn't do the service commitment, going to the meeting every day and then not drinking and using in between the meetings. It wasn't working for me. What finally worked for me was I sat down with another alcoholic, and I was on a lot of drugs, but this person that ended up sponsoring me had never tried another drug in his life. He had never sponsored anybody. He had just under 2 years sober when he decided to sponsor me. All we did, he picked me up at 6:30 a.m. every single morning in his 1983 mailman Jeep from the sober living house that I was staying at. We went to the movie theater that he was managing. We went in the basement, made a cup of coffee, and we did the work. All we did was we read from this book and did exactly what it said. If you're out there and you're struggling with addiction or alcoholism and you haven't tried this yet, let go of all the things that people say. Let go of all the things people say about the fellowship, about the book, about recovery, and just sit down with someone that has read this and has done the work and found recovery and see if it works for you. But put everything you have into it. That's the main thing about recovery. Any journey that we actually find that works, we have to go all in. We have to give everything we have to the program that we are building to find our recovery. It's really important that we don't go in half-assed because we don't get it. We won't get it. South Jersey coming in. What's up, Jeremy? Good to see you. Jumping in 6 months, 3 weeks clean, free, and sober, life loving, big love in this family room. Amen, brother. Love you, brother. Addicts, I love you all. Love you too, brother. Love you too. So this is a letter that the most prominent doctor in this field that was helping addicts and alcoholics. He wrote this letter about this book for an open letter for the fellowship, okay? To whom it may concern, I've specialized in the treatment of alcoholism for many years. In late 1934, I attended a patient who, though he had been a competent businessman of good earning capacity, was an alcoholic of a type I had come to regard as hopeless. As me. I don't know about you, but I was hopeless. In the course of his third treatment, he acquired certain ideas concerning a possible means of recovery. As part of his rehabilitation, he commenced to present his conceptions to other alcoholics, impressing upon them that they must do likewise with still others. So the whole point from the beginning of this entire thing, from the beginning of recovery in general, when something was formed for us to find recovery, the heart of it and the beginning of it was for us to learn so that we can help others. That's it. The beginning of recovery was us learning how to recover so that we could help others find that path. And no matter if you're a 12-stepper or if you went to treatment or you go to church or any of that stuff, the whole point of us finding recovery is to help others find recovery. Because what that does is it leaves us in a state of being recovered. We can't, and it says that all over, and it's a cliche thing to say, but we can't keep what we don't give away. It's a God paradox. They exist all over in our kind of work. So this has become a basis of a rapidly growing fellowship of these men and their families. This man and over 100 others appear to have recovered. And I have that underlined and highlighted, recovered. I personally know scores of cases who are of the type with whom other methods had failed completely. These facts appear to be extreme medical importance because of the extraordinary possibilities of rapid growth inherent in this group. They may mark a new epoch in the annals of alcoholism. These men may well have a remedy for thousands of such situations. You may rely absolutely on anything they say about themselves. Very truly yours, William D. Silkworth, MD. So this guy is someone that, he's been trying to help alcoholics, trying to help these people for years, for his entire career. And what he does, he's doing all these different practices, maybe locking them away or maybe, helping them by psychology and by therapy and things like this. And nothing is working. Nothing's working for all of them. But then he meets Bill W., the founder of this stuff. And when he meets Bill is like on his deathbed, basically. There is nothing Bill can do. There is nothing he can do to help Bill. The story of them working together is extraordinary. They had this time. Bill would keep coming back to the insane asylum. And Bill's this guy that was like a stockbroker. He was able to be successful in business. He had these high network friends and all this, but he couldn't find recovery and he couldn't stop drinking. And then when he saw Bill, who was hopeless, and he considered people like Bill hopeless, a doctor, and then he found that he had recovered, he wrote an open letter for anybody that picks up this book to know that they can listen to this book as if it is true. They can listen to it and they know that, hey, I don't know what's going on with this thing, but I've seen hopeless people become filled with hope and seem to have recovered for whatever they're doing in here, right? Then another doctor writes, or it actually might be the same doctor, sorry. The subject presented in this book seems to me to be of paramount importance to those afflicted with alcoholic addiction or addiction. I say this after many years' experience as medical director of one of the oldest hospitals in the country treating alcoholic and drug addiction. There was, therefore, a sense of real satisfaction when I was asked to contribute a few words on a subject which is covered in such masterly detail on these pages. We doctors have realized for a long time that some form of moral psychology was of urgent importance to alcoholics and addicts, but its application presented difficulties beyond our conception. A doctor is saying he doesn't know how to get the moral psychology into people like us. What with our ultra-modern standards, our scientific approach to everything, we are perhaps not well equipped to apply the powers of good that lie outside our synthetic knowledge. Many years ago, one of the leading contributors to this book came under our care in this hospital, and while here, he acquired some ideas which he put into practical application at once. At once. And I have this little line here, at once. That's the cool thing about this, and a very important thing about this that I found. If we find that small window of opportunity to get clean and sober, or we find someone, if we're recovered and we find someone that has that window, that's whether they're going to meetings or they reach out for help, or they're in that place where they're struggling, they're hurting, we have to get them to be taking action immediately, right now. Because that window of opportunity before we drink or use and go back into that cycle is short. So us being recovered, it's important that we tell the people that we're helping, we have to take action now. Now, while you're not drinking or using, we have to start the relief now. Later, he requested the privilege of being allowed to tell his story to other patients here, and with some misgiving, we consented. The cases we have followed through have been more interesting. In fact, many of them are amazing. The unselfishness of these men, as we have come to know them, the entire absence of profit motive, and their community spirit is indeed inspiring to one who has labored long and wearily in this alcoholic field. They believe in themselves and still more in the power which pulls chronic alcoholics and addicts back from the gates of death. Of course, an alcoholic or addict ought to be freed from his physical craving for liquor and drugs. And this often requires a definite hospital procedure before psychological measures can be of maximum benefit. And that's something, and I think I get to it down here, but it's important that when we're working with others, right? And I've made this boundary for myself. I don't work with people that are still high, and I don't work with people that are still drunk. Reason being is we can't get through to them, and it causes a lot of emotional pain for us. When I'm talking to somebody that is drunk out of their mind, and they're just telling me all the depression, they're telling me all these things like suicide and all this stuff, and I've heard all of them, right? When we can't give them applications to help and to solve, to look for the solution, because they're in that mind state, it's useless. It's useless. So literally, when someone hits me up and they're struggling, and they're high and they're drunk, I tell them I love them, and then I text them also, but I tell them, hit me up tomorrow when you're no longer drunk or high, and I send them a text just in case they aren't going to remember the conversation, right? Recovery isn't for the ones who need it. It's not even for the ones who want it. It's for the ones who do the work. Amen, Melinda. That's exactly it. That's exactly it. Anyone that was in the hopeless state that I was in, and I know a lot of you were in, anyone that has actually experienced that place where we can't find recovery, we've learned that it takes work. It's for the ones that do it. It's for the ones that do the work. Good morning, Kyle. Good to see you, brother. You coming up on 60 days? Getting close to 60 days? Melinda, I'm a new sponsor. Do you have any suggestions on what I can suggest to my new sponsee to start doing for her to begin the work now? We started reading, but of course, we're both pretty busy, and I was wondering what I could suggest for her to start doing when she isn't with me. I'm just asking around. 100%. 100%. Number one, in early recovery, make sure that she's calling you every day. And on those calls, it's very short, with the amount of time that we're like, okay, well, how are you doing? How are you feeling? What's going on in your life? What's going on with relationships? Things like that. Then whatever step that you're working on, like if you're on the first, second, third, fourth step, ask what actions she's taking that day in order to finish that step. And it's really important. And here's the thing. I'm not going to preach from here saying I know 100% the best way to do this, right? For me, I did the steps quickly. I was finished in under 60 days with all my amends and everything. I was able to do everything by day 60. What that did for me when I was actually working on the work every single day, every day, that was the only relief I was getting. And it helped me make it through the period where I was still craving, still obsessing. I was able to get relief from that craving and obsession by doing the work. And when we are working on something during the day and our sponsor has action steps for us to take that day, it's going to help us get through that day. And usually I wouldn't give her things that are of our own habitual nature. Like, it's cool to say, do a gratitude list, something like that. But if we don't take it from the literature, if we don't take it from someone who is talking about recovery from alcoholism and drug addiction, and we don't take action steps from this, then we don't know the results for that person. So when we're talking to someone in early recovery that we're sponsoring, we're both busy, it's really simple to have action steps that we're going to take through that period. And then when you have the calls with her every single day, you talk about what actions are going to be taken that day. Following day, hey, how did those actions go? How are you feeling? What's going on with relationships? That kind of stuff. Okay, today do this. And everything should have the purpose of how are we going to complete the steps, period. Sponsors, in my opinion, and what I really believe, is that sponsors are not supposed to be your friend. They're not supposed to be your life coach. There's people to be friends and there's people to be life coaches outside of the person that is here to save your ass, to save your life. And what saves an alcoholic or an addict's life in early recovery is doing the work. And it's the work that we're talking about here, right? Just love it. Working it every day. Amen, Jeremy. Kyle, I'm sorry, brother. Love you, man. Love you, brother. Congrats on day 7. Correction, action is needed. Thanks. Amen. Love you guys. So, frothy emotional appeal seldom suffices. The message which can interest and hold these alcoholic people must have depth and weight. Depth and weight. In nearly all cases, their ideals must be grounded in a power greater than themselves if they are to recreate their lives. And that's interesting. That's what's cool about this book. When I read it, sometimes we hear different things, and sometimes it's even opposing to what I want to think. It says in nearly all cases, their ideals must be grounded in a power greater than themselves. This is coming from the doctor. And it's interesting because I have met a couple atheists that have long-term sobriety. So it's interesting. The 12 steps work. Even when you don't believe. You don't necessarily have to believe to do the work. If any feel that as psychiatrists directing a hospital for alcoholics and addicts, we appear somewhat sentimental, let them stand with us while on the firing line. See the tragedies, the despairing wives, the little children. Let the solving of these problems become a part of their daily work and even their sleeping moments. And the most cynical will not wonder that we have accepted and encouraged this movement. This is coming from a doctor who has been trying to help addicts and alcoholics for years. This guy's on the front lines. He's trying everything he can to help people like us, watching the misery, watching the people hurting, watching the families and the despairing wives and all of these kids that are affected by this alcoholism and drug addiction. And he's doing everything he can for years and has to consistently fail over and over and over and over, watching this happening. And then what he says here is go ahead. You go out and do the work that I've been doing. Watch how many people are suffering from this and feel powerless and helpless. And then see something come up that's helping people. And then see if you don't encourage it, and get it out there, right? Because the heart of people that actually go out to help addicts and alcoholics, their heart is to help. It's not for lifting themselves up. It's not to become that guy that figured this out. Nah, it's because we want to help people that are helpless. That's what it's all about. Absolutely, Melinda. To newcomer in here, you're worth it. Congrats, you made it here. Big love in this family. Amen. Do you have some stickers with your website? I know a place they might have a difference. They might make a difference. Stickers, what do you mean? What do you mean with stickers for your website? Sam, we can hop on a call, brother. Be good to see you. This is so true. Daily work, day out loud. Failure brings success. Yeah, dude. I've failed a lot in life, in recovery, and takes failures to learn, right? We feel after many years of experience that we have found nothing which has contributed more to the rehabilitation of these men than the altruistic movement now growing up among them. Men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol and drugs. The sensation is so elusive that while they admit it is injurious, they cannot, after a time, differentiate the true from the false. To them, their alcoholic life seems the only normal one. They are restless, irritable, and discontented unless they can again experience the sense of ease and comfort which comes at once by taking a few drinks which they see others taking with impunity. That's the obsession. When we talk about the obsession and the craving is the physical allergy. The physical allergy that we need this drug, we need this alcohol, we need it because we're craving it. The obsession is, how come that person can drink and use without losing their home and becoming homeless? How come that person gets to do it? How can I make it work? How can I do this thing? How can I start smoking just a little bit of crack? How can I just drink a little bit of beer? That's the obsession, is the way that our mind tries to twist into being able to drink and use like normal people. Okay. After they have succumbed to their desire again, as many do, and the phenomenon of craving develops, they pass through the well-known stages of a spree, emerging remorseful with a firm resolution not to drink again. This is repeated over and over. Unless this person can experience an entire psychic change, there is very little hope of his recovery. And that was my experience. I tried over and over and over again. And there were so many times where I dumped dope in a toilet, I flushed it down, and you could have strapped me to a lie detector test, and I would have passed, saying I'm never going to use or drink again. And then in the morning, I went and pawned my TV, or I pawned this over here and went to the dope man. It's a really crappy place to be. And if you're out there and you're struggling right now, and you hear that, if you feel that, it's possible. Not only possible, but it's likely if we do the work. The reason why the success rates for addicts and alcoholics is so low is because it's not talked about enough anymore about how important the work is. That going to meetings every day isn't going to do it. It's not going to do it. If you're one of the people that was able to go to meetings every day and find recovery just by osmosis, just by going to meetings, congratulations, love you, welcome. However, don't preach that to people like me, people that really have this thing, that have to do the work, or else we die in our alcoholism and drug addiction. It's important that we tell the truth to people that are coming in. We have to do the work. Good morning, Robert. Good to see you, brother. Good to see you. And you're coming up on a year in like 15 days, right? 15 days till your year, Robert? Something like that. On the other hand, and strange as this may seem to those who do not understand, once a psychic change has occurred, the very same person who seemed doomed, who had so many problems, he despaired of ever solving them, suddenly finds himself easily able to control his desire for alcohol and drugs. The only effort necessary being that required to follow a few simple rules. And guys, these rules are spiritual principles that we learn through the process of doing the steps. And if we have already gone through the steps, we have to be finding people to do the steps with. If you are a 12-stepper and you got sober, you found recovery from drug addiction and alcoholism through doing the 12 steps, it is vital that you are out there looking for people to do the 12 steps with. Reason being is there's people out there suffering, plus one of the rules, one of the spiritual principles that we have to follow to remain recovered is carrying the message, helping others. Nothing so much ensures an alcoholic and addicts long-term recovery as intensive work with other addicts and alcoholics. And something, I don't know if I put it in to read today, but something that's vitally important that I think is not talked about enough in our fellowships is that we were never told to sit inside the rooms and wait for people to come in. It even talks about in here that there are thousands of men and women right in your area outside dropping from alcoholism and drug addiction who may never even hear about the fellowships, who may never even know that they exist. So how are we going to get out and reach more of them? How are we going to get out and do that? The healing is in the step work. Amen. Yes, sir. I'm stoked for you, Robert. 15 days. Guys, we're going to take a 30-second break. Be right back. What's up, family? I hope you're enjoying this episode as much as I do when I'm making them. And guys, if you are getting value from this, if you've heard any golden nuggets that you think other people should hear, make sure that you're sharing it with your groups or your pages so other people that are looking for a message of hope are able to find it. Also, in case you weren't here for the beginning of the show, if you have a recovery story and you want to learn how to add impact and income through sharing it, follow the link in the pinned comment to book your one-time, 100% free call with me, where we're going to strategize exactly how you can share your story and do just that. Enjoy the rest of the show. Keep living Recovered on Purpose. All right. So I am hopping back over here. I'm hopping out of the doctor's opinion. We understand, if we're at this point, we understand what an addict and an alcoholic is. And guys, look at my book. This thing is like literally falling apart. And everyone that's following this, everyone that's been following me, that I am a very faithful Christian. I love Jesus. I love God. I love my Bible. And this is falling apart. There's a reason why I had to have this and on top of my Bible. So whether you're a faithful person, whether you're a Christian or not, even Christians need this thing if they're in the state that I was in. What happens in here and the work that it simplifies for someone specifically like us is so valuable, and it saved my life. And that's why I'm so heavy into it. So, and I lost a bookmark, but we're going to be right here. So check this out. This is from We Agnostics. If a mere code of morals or a better philosophy of life were sufficient to overcome alcoholism and addiction, many of us would have recovered long ago. But we found that such codes and philosophies did not save us, no matter how much we tried. We could wish to be moral. We could wish to be philosophically comforted. In fact, we could will these things with all our might, but the needed power wasn't there. Our human resources, as marshaled by the will, were not sufficient. They failed utterly. Guys, this was my experience. I tried so many different times. I tried so hard to find recovery, to will it into my life. I worked so hard in so many different ways, and I couldn't get it. I would sit down. I would spend hours a day, sometimes high, usually high. But I would be like writing my own 12-step program. I'd be writing my own work. I'd be trying to figure out writing prayers over here and different things, trying to get sober, but I couldn't. Lack of power. That was our dilemma. We had to find a power by which we could live, and it had to be a power greater than ourselves. Obviously. But where and how were we to find this power? Well, that's exactly what this book is about. Its main object is to enable you to find a power greater than yourself, which will solve your problem. That means we have written a book which we believe to be spiritual as well as moral. And it means, of course, that we are going to talk about God. Here, difficulty arises with agnostics. Many times we talk to a new man and watch his hope rise as we discuss his alcoholic problems and explain our fellowship. But his face falls when we speak of spiritual matters, especially when we mention God. For we have reopened a subject which our man thought he had neatly evaded or entirely ignored. And I've experienced this a lot because I talk about God a lot. And as much as, and I was even right before this, someone commented on something, too bad you turned religious, or else you could help a lot of people. I was like, dude, I'm not even religious. I don't even consider myself religious. I just love God, know who God is to me. I love Jesus, and I do the work. And I help people. You don't have to be Christian to be helped by me either. I love everybody. I've sponsored an atheist who actually found God during the step work. That's what's beautiful about this. I remember he was staunch atheist, super hardcore atheist. He would argue with me about this and argue with me about that. And we were sitting there and we were reading In We Agnostics. And what he would do is he would do this thing where he would point at the book and he would yell how stupid that is or how stupid that is. And then we were at this cafe and we were doing the work. We were reading this book and he goes like this. And he looks up at me and he says, bro, I feel him. I feel him. And this is an atheist that through the 12 steps and through doing the work with someone that had been through it, found an understanding of God that was able to get him clean and sober. That's the beauty of this. And that's why even with everything that I do, I'm never going to forget about the foundational work. I'm never going to forget about what actually got me to this point, because the work of the 12 steps is what saved my life. Jesus saved my soul. I knew Jesus before I got sober, before I got clean, and I believe that I was already destined for heaven before I even found recovery. But I wanted to live a life free from drugs and alcohol, and reading the Bible, going to church was not doing it for me. It wasn't working. What worked for me was working the 12 steps, period. I won't ever give a fellowship, any fellowship, I will never give them credit for getting me sober or clean. Reason being is because I think that's false. And I would be lying if I credited a fellowship for my recovery, because that wasn't the case. I was going to 2 meetings a day, every single day in different fellowships, NA, CA, AA, all of them. And I was going to these meetings and I wasn't finding recovery. I wasn't able to find sobriety or clean time. But when I actually sat down and did the work, since day one of me sitting down and doing the work with someone, I have not drank or used. And on day 26, on day 25, I did my first ever 5th step. And we'll read what that is in a second. On day 25, I did my first ever 5th step. On day 26, the obsession left and it hasn't returned. And if you've had that spiritual awakening, if you've had that experience where, you were obsessing, you were craving, you had all these worries, all these resentments and everything that were causing you to want to drink, and then you have the spiritual awakening, that moment of clarity where you don't want drugs or alcohol anymore. It's so important that we explain that moment, because it's different for each and every one of us. The way that it comes about, the way that it feels, the way that you think on the other side of it. But that moment is what the addict and alcoholic suffering actually wants. They want relief from that suffering state of irritable, discontent, needing drugs, needing alcohol, feeling helpless, feeling hopeless, all of that stuff. And then when that moment of clarity hits and that awakening happens, it's as if a whole new life opens up to us. So we need to be explaining that that's what happens. That is what happens when we find recovery and we are recovered. And that's where you can get to. You're a spiritual person. You just have to be human. LOL. Amen. Amen. I will never forget that moment. It was so powerful. Amen. Amen. Your pocket is sending stickers. All right, we're going to hop over to chapter 5. Who knows what chapter 5 is? So this is chapter 5. Okay? The first 4 chapters of this book. So we're already on page 58. So page 1 through 57 is relating to the addict or alcoholic, relating to them, saying, we get this, we understand, we've been there. There's doctors saying that they can't even help us, right? But they're saying, whatever you find in this book, listen to it if you're in this state, right? Chapter 5, how it works. So now we're into the place where we're talking about the exact steps that need to be taken in order to find recovery. And look, I have little, can you see this? I have a bunch of things highlighted here because when I had a spiritual awakening in early recovery, there was a big thing that shifted because there was a lot of stuff that was passed around in the fellowships. People will openly talk about how, oh, well, you don't have to believe in God. And like, I have my own understanding of God. And like, I think God is a doorknob and I think God is this and I think God is that. And that would always like seep in like, okay, well, what do I do? Like, who is God? I believe in Jesus, but am I going to be able to, practice my faith in here? Am I going to be able to do this in here? And it was killing me, But then when I had this other awakening, this spiritual awakening that it says, as we understood him. And that's what's beautiful. We all have a common problem and a common solution. And if we would quit fighting about who that solution is, the solution is the steps and finding recovery through doing the work and finding a God of our understanding, a higher power of our understanding. And for Christians out there, when we are working with addicts and alcoholics who don't believe, and this is when I sponsor people, one of the first conversations I have with them is, who is God to you? What is your understanding of God? And I let them tell me. And then I say, okay, great. And I mean, we're in a great conversation, so excuse my tone. And then I say, okay, I'm very faithful in Jesus. I'm a Christian. I go to church. I do this, I do that. But that is over here. And my faith will never be brought into our work here unless you ask me. I will never preach to you. I will never bring Jesus up to you or talk to you about him unless you ask. So in that moment, in our first conversation, I make it very clear that we're working on finding God of his understanding, and that because there's a lot of wounds that happen for addicts and alcoholics in the church. So I make it very clear that you're not going to get preached at. That's not what this is about. If you want to come to church with me, let's go to church. If you want to read the Bible, let's read the Bible. When we're doing this work, we're doing this work, and whatever happens between us is what happens. And the beautiful thing for you Christians out there, by opening that up at the beginning, they feel way safer than thinking that this guy is going to be preaching at me while doing the steps. They feel safer to find the understanding instead of being told what it has to be. And guys, 3 of my sponsees in my recovery have decided to give their life to Jesus. Not because I was preaching at them, not because I was telling them it's the only way, none of that, but because we did the work, they found recovery, and they wanted to understand who God was that was working in their life. And then they asked me, because I opened it up at the very beginning. Whenever you want to ask me, feel free. Feel free. Good morning, Pam. Good to see you, Pam. Good to see you, Brittany. They are fitting, though. Yeah. Guys, if you want a good little comeback for when someone is using or telling people you can use a doorknob, and I'm careful with where I place this, and make sure you place it right. But if you ever hear someone say, oh, you can use a doorknob for your higher power, I'm like, be careful, because the doorknob will turn on you. Ha 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 ha. Knee slapper. All right. Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. Those who do not recover are people who cannot or will not completely give themselves to this simple program. usually men and women who are constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves. There are such unfortunates. They are not at fault. They seem to have been born that way. They are naturally incapable of grasping and developing a manner of living which demands rigorous honesty. Their chances are less than average. There are those, too, who suffer from grave emotional and mental disorders, but many of them do recover if they have the capacity to be honest. Our stories disclose in a general way what we used to be like, what happened, and what we are like now. If you have decided you want what we have and are willing to go to any length to get it, then you are ready to take certain steps. That's another thing that I have sponsees do. Because it says right here that if you have decided you want what we have and are willing to go to any length to get it, then you are ready to take certain steps. So I make my sponsees at the beginning, I go right here, I show them that before we start reading the book, and then in the front of the book, they have to write the date, and I am willing to go to any length to find recovery. So they make that solemn oath at the very beginning. And what I found is that it makes it so that later on, when there's an amends that, I really don't want to talk to that person, all I have to do is just open their book and point. Pretty simple. As some of these we balked. We thought we could find an easier, softer way, but we could not. With all the earnestness at our command, we beg of you to be fearless and thorough from the very start. Some of us have tried to hold on to our old ideas, and the result was nil until we let go absolutely. Remember that we deal with alcohol and drugs, cunning, baffling, powerful. Without help, it is too much for us. But there is one who has all power. That one is God. May you find him now. Half measures availed us nothing. That means half-assing. We can't half-ass through the work. We can't half-ass for our recovery. In early recovery, guys, if you're out there and you're in early recovery, you have a window. You have a window of opportunity to get onto this thing, work your butt off, have it be the number one priority, the only thing you care about, because your work, your job, all that stuff, keep it. But if you don't put this number one, you'll lose all this. At least for a certain amount of time, you have to get to a place of being recovered, a place where you can start helping others. And that's when you can put priorities in place. Okay. And you'll hear people say that my recovery has to be number one, and I have to do this as number one for the rest of my life, or else everything will fall. And guys, if we are really living the 12th step, if we're really practicing these principles in all our affairs, that means that we are putting recovery at our priority by bringing it into all of our affairs. There's absolutely times when I am not going to drop everything that I'm doing and go do a 12-step call for someone I have no idea who they are, nothing like that. And that doesn't mean that I don't care. It means that if I was to go do that, that's affecting my ability to do things like this. That's affecting my ability to be of maximum service to God, right? And, and it's everybody works their own program. Everybody works exactly how they think they should be doing it, what priorities need to be in place. And yeah, we got to be real. Remember that we deal with, half measures availed us nothing. We stood at the turning point. We asked his protection and care with complete abandon. And guys, while I was reading this with my sponsor, we would stop. Every time it said, we asked, or we did, or we said. Right here, before we went through the rest of the steps, we asked his protection and care with complete abandon. So before even starting the step work, God, I ask for your care. I ask for your help. Help me get through this work. Help me find recovery. Help me find the people that can help me find recovery. God, thank you. Amen. Boom. Before we even start, we got to start asking for help. Is chapter 5 how it works? Yes, sir, it is. I always thought that people using the doorknob for their God is like referring to God opens new doors for us. I like that. To newcomers, if you're having feelings of anxiety, unsure, depressed, any of these, hang in there. We're your biggest supporters. Amen. We care about you. You're worth it. Communicate your feelings. Nothing but sharing and caring in this room. Amen. Got to go, brother. Good to see you, brother. Killing it at speaking the word. Amen. I noticed that he says the word, and we're talking from the big book. Here are the steps we took, which are suggested as a program of recovery. 1, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol and drugs, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. After step 5 is when the obsession left me and has not returned. 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. And that was something that, my second or third sponsor in my recovery, he made clear, because it's not about going out and making amends to everybody from our 4th step list. The 4th step list is good to use as a reference, but we don't go make amends to people that we personally didn't harm. So if you're a sponsor out there and you have a sponsee that went through trauma, that was, as a kid, was hurt as a kid, they are absolutely not supposed to go make amends to somebody like that. Because, and I've heard of sponsors having people go make amends to people that harmed them. And that's re-traumatizing, and that's not going to help. So we have to question, is it someone that that we harmed? Is it someone that harmed us, or is it someone we harmed? If we didn't cause harm to that person, specific harm that we can point out, then we don't go make amends to them, because that's just going to harm everybody, right? Made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. Continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him, praying only for knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. Notice that it says improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him. That means that no matter what your faith is, whether you're a Christian or not, or you have a very specific faith, we are called to improve it, no matter how we understand God. 12, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps. Having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps. That means that the result of these steps is having a spiritual awakening, a psychic change. We tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Many of us exclaimed, "What an order! I can't go through with it." Do not be discouraged. No one among us has been able to maintain anything like perfect adherence to these principles. We are not saints. The point is that we are willing to grow along spiritual lines. The principles we have set down are guides to progress. We claim spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection. Our description of the alcoholic, the chapter of the agnostic, and our personal adventures before and after make clear 3 pertinent ideas. A, that we were alcoholic or addict and could not manage our own lives. B, that probably no human power could have relieved our alcoholism. And C, that God could and would if he were sought. Can I get an amen? Can I get an amen? Now, there's somewhere in here I want to read real quick. Guys, if you're out there and you're still you're struggling, there are different journeys and different paths to recovery. If you have not tried the 12 steps, not the fellowships, that's not what I mean. If you went to a group, you went to a fellowship and you had a bad experience and you just don't ever want to go back, don't go back to that one. Go to a different one. Each AA or NA or CA or HA group is autonomous, and they don't speak for the entire fellowship as a whole. And there could be people over here that don't go over here, and their personality, their energy, their higher power, everything is completely different. Find the fellowship that works for you. Find a sponsor that will do the work with you. It's not about what fellowship am I a part of, as much as somebody that will take you through the 12 steps. That's it. That's it. All right. I'm looking for step 10. Oh yeah, this is where it is. All right. So this thought brings us to step 10, which suggests we continue to take personal inventory and continue to set right any new mistakes as we go along. I'm about to read some promises. Okay. These are promises of step 10. We've all heard the ninth step promises, and I'll close it with those. But these are step 10 promises. We vigorously commenced this way of living as we cleaned up our past. We have entered the world of the spirit. Our next function is to grow in understanding and effectiveness. This is not an overnight matter. It should continue for our lifetime. Continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. When these crop up, we ask God at once to remove them. We discuss them with someone immediately and make amends quickly if we have harmed anyone. Then we resolutely turn our thoughts to someone we can help. So the whole point of getting to a place of recovery is being able to recognize when the feelings of restless, irritable, and discontent come up due to us being selfish, dishonest, resentful, or fearful. So when those things, when we feel like that, when we feel restless, irritable, discontent, depressed, of no use, of no help for anybody, those kinds of things, the bedevilments, we want to take inventory about where in my life am I being selfish? Where in my life am I being dishonest? Where am I not able to bring my full self into the picture because of something that I'm hiding? Who do I resent right now? Who's pissing me off? And what am I afraid of? And then when we get those out, we talk to our sponsor, spiritual advisor, mentor about those things, and we clear them out. That's how we get into a place of the freedom again. In our recovery, that stuff pops up. But then once we find that again, then we resolutely turn our thoughts to someone we can help. It's clear that first we have to get ourselves in a place of recovered again. We have to get ourselves in a good place. We have to be able to talk about why we're fearful, why we're angry, why we're, dreading something. And when we get that out with our sponsor, spiritual advisor, then we turn to help someone. We aren't going to, there's certain times and there's certain ways that helping someone will solve a problem within ourselves. It does very, very, very often. And how am I going to say this? So we don't want to go into service of someone else with a selfish ambition. I'm sick. I'm feeling crappy. I'm feeling helpless. I'm feeling anxious. So I'm going to go help someone else. We have to get our reasons, our resentments, fears, dishonesty, and we have to get that out and then go help someone so that those don't crop up again. But we don't want to bring those thoughts, those feelings, that energy into the atmosphere of helping someone else, because we are transmitting what we have, right? So we want to be of maximum service to others. And we have, so check this out. Then we resolutely turn our thoughts to someone we can help. Love and tolerance of others is our code. And we have ceased fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol and drugs. For by this time, sanity will have returned. We will seldom be interested in liquor or drugs. If tempted, we recoil from it as from a hot flame. We react sanely and normally, and we will find that this has happened automatically. It's happened automatically. Just by doing the work, we have a point in our recovery where, holy cow, haven't thought about drugs or alcohol for a while. Holy cow, it's totally different now. Happens automatically. Happens automatically. Personal inventory. I call my sponsees fears by telling them they will not make amends to anyone who has abused them in any way. Amen, Pam. That's perfect. That's perfect. We have to be really careful. And Pam said it perfectly. I have actually heard of sponsors telling their sponsees that they have to look for their part in their abuse. And I can jive with and understand a little bit about, we have responsibility to stop bringing our abuse or the trauma that was caused to us into our life by thinking about it and into, projecting it on other people and things like that. But we were not at fault, and we didn't do anything to deserve or cause childhood abuse. It's not true. So we have to quit making people look for that. because it's not true. Thank you, Pam, for doing that. Say it loud, Adam. Amen. 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 Big one, finding what works for us. Yes. Good morning. Good morning. Good to see you, brother. Good to see you. Where you been? Good morning, recovery family. God bless you all. C8. What's up, bro? C8 in the house. For by this time, sanity will have returned. We will seldom be interested in liquor or drugs. If tempted, we recoil from it as from a hot flame. We react sanely and normally, and we find that this has happened automatically. We will see that our new attitude toward liquor and drugs has been given to us without any thought or effort on our own part. It just comes. And guys, that's talking about focusing on getting rid of it. The effort and the thought was put into the step work, doing the inventory, doing the helping others and all that, not on specifically focusing on drugs and alcohol and how to get rid of this. That's what it's saying. It just comes. That is the miracle of it. We are not fighting it. Neither are we avoiding temptation. Guys, and that's another thing. I got to say it loud. You do not have to avoid places, avoid things. Once you are recovered, you are free. You are free to go and do whatever you want in your recovery. We are not afraid of using drugs or using alcohol or something if we go here. And I'm not saying that in early recovery, go ahead and go to the trap house. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying once we're in a state of being recovered, once we've had that spiritual awakening, once we have a firm foundation of recovery where we're helping others and we have these things going on for us, right? And we feel that place. We don't have to be afraid to go to our brother's wedding because there's alcohol there. We don't have to avoid going over here if it could serve our life and help us serve others. We don't have to avoid places because there's going to be alcohol there. Guys, since year 2 of recovery, since I published my book, I've gone down to where I used to pick up dope in Denver at least twice a year just to go talk to people, just to go love on people. I remember the first time I saw my old drug dealer, because where I used to go pick up, there was gang over here, gang over here, gang over here. And I remember the first time that I walked up, the dude that used to sell me dope, he was like looking down and then he looks up at me and he stands up and he's like, look at the weight on you. And he like pats me on the shoulder. He's like, dude. I was like, yeah, bro, I've got over 2 years. He was like, man, I didn't think people like you ever got clean. It's good to see you, bro. Get 2 more, you know? And we stay in contact. The thing is, and guys, compassion and empathy and understanding for everybody involved is really important, right? We don't want to hate or resent or anything, anybody from our entire life, okay? I don't hate, drug dealers. I don't hate the people that sold me drugs because I don't know their path. I don't know what they've been dealing with, and I would have gotten it from someone else, Okay. I'm going to hop in the comments, and then I'm going to read the 9-step promises, and we're going to end. While I was still in addiction, I sought some of my abusers out to make them make amends to me. I wouldn't recommend it. Oof. I didn't know that part. I would not recommend that either. Good morning, brother Canada. Amen. Life has been all over the place, my friend. Great to be here with you, good sir. Good to see you. Good to see you. Haters, welcome too. Haters, welcome too. Amen. Now, guys, a lot of people call these the promises, but there's a little bit of a mistake in calling them the promises, because there's promises all over in the big book. There's promises associated with different steps. Like the third step promises are we had a new employer in our life. He was the principal. We were his agent, that kind of stuff. Those are promises of the third step. These are the 9th step promises. And the reason why I say that is because I've heard a lot of people in recovery that are on like step 3 that start saying the promises are coming true in my life. And we have to be careful with that kind of language with people in early recovery, because if they think the promises are they got their job and they got their car, and they feel good, they'll never experience what the actual promises are that happen during the 9th step of making amends. So when we're talking about the promises, we have to say these are the 9th step promises that happen while making amends during that action step, right? One moment. All right. These are what happen when we are making the amends. If we are painstaking about this phase of our development, we will be amazed before we are halfway through. We are going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. We will not regret the past, nor wish to shut the door on it. We will comprehend the word serenity, and we will know peace. No matter how far down the scale we have gone, we will see how our experience can benefit others. That feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. We will lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. Self-seeking will slip away. Our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. Fear of people and of economic insecurity will leave us. We will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. We will suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. Are these extravagant promises? We think not. They are being fulfilled among us, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. They will always materialize if we work for them. Guys, I love you all. There's a reason why I read from this. I don't, again, just tell you guys, I'm not speaking for any fellowship. I consider myself a member of recovery that absolutely 100% qualifies for every single A that I've ever heard of. I can go to any fellowship and I qualify. But what saved my life was reading the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous with someone that had been through it, doing exactly what it said, as it said it, when it said it, and I found recovery, and I'm recovered. So I love you guys so much. Thank you for being here. Keep living recovered on purpose.